Jasmine was driving her car, slowed down before a traffic light, looked through the side window, and saw her husband sitting quietly behind the car wheel. Wow, how is that possible? There was no limit to her surprise. A couple of days ago, her husband had a bad backache. He was lying in bed and moaning, unable even to roll over from side to side without help. And now he was driving. So he drove out right after me. Jasmine was confused. The woman shook her head. Maybe it was some hallucination. And now her husband would disappear along with his car, but no, he didn't disappear anywhere. The extra traffic lights section turned on, and Jasmine had to start moving because there was a line of cars behind her. She hit the gas in desperation and drove in the opposite direction to the one her fake patient had chosen. Pulling to the side of the road, Jasmine dialed her husband's number. He answered instantly. She heard the sound of a TV. How is that possible, she thought. Eric, are you home? The wife asked her husband sternly. No, at my mistress's, the spouse replied, grinning. Already? So soon? Why is he telling me about it calmly? The woman thought. Eric, I'm serious. Jasmine, I'm not serious. What kind of questions are you asking? Are you out of your mind? The husband became angry. What if I go back home and check right now? The wife asked. The answer was a beep. Eric dropped the call. He must be offended, Jasmine thought. After staying on the side of the road a little longer, the woman realized she couldn't work today. After calling the customer and canceling the appointment, she headed home. Her husband was dozing on the bed in almost the same position Jasmine had left him. She was losing her mind. Jasmine decided to tell Eric about it all and see his reaction. And she saw his reaction. It was exactly as she expected. At first, Eric went pale. Then he blushed. And then he laughed nervously. Jasmine, well, how could you even see that man, especially since he was far away from you? Stop, his wife commanded. Well, imagine that you see a woman, even if she is far away, but she looks a lot like me. Would you be mistaken? Jasmine, don't be nervous. Answer me. There's no need for a detailed examination, Jasmine replied. Your clone was sitting in that car. He looked just like you. It's like some TV series. I even felt unwell, and you're telling me not to be nervous. Eric closed his eyes. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, so there's something to say after all, Jasmine triumphed. No, forget it. I don't want to hear anything. The endless questions had led nowhere that day, and Jasmine had never received an answer. However, the woman thought about what she had seen, both at home and at work. And even after a while, after Eric had finally recovered, Jasmine continued to stare through the windows of passing cars. She kept seeing some weird things. I can't take it anymore, she said to her husband a few days later. What do you mean? Eric asked, not stopping to watch soccer on TV. Eric, please look at me, Jasmine demanded. I am looking at you, Eric confirmed without taking his eyes off the screen. Look, do you remember that story? What story? The husband finally turned as the commercials began. The story when I saw you in the city, but it wasn't you? Jasmine looked at her husband very sternly. Eric was a bad liar, and even if he tried, Jasmine instantly knew he wasn't telling the truth. Eric managed to keep Jasmine in the dark only by avoiding the conversation. But now Eric had no choice, and he told his wife an incredible story in the spirit of traditional Indian movies. A couple of weeks before Jasmine saw his clone in the car, Eric saw him face to face on an airplane. Remember when I went overseas to meet my partner? Eric asked after turning off the TV. Excitement filled him, and now that he didn't have to hide anything, he couldn't wait to share the story with his wife. Of course I remember, Jasmine exclaimed, feeling her husband's excitement. Just imagine I walk into the cabin, go to my seat, and see someone's back right in front of me. Some man is trying to put his bag in the luggage compartment. I'm waiting, but the people behind me are not so patient, so I had to hurry it up. He turns around and... And? Jasmine repeated nervously. I see myself, her husband muttered. Well, he sees himself, too. Can you imagine? We were like paralyzed. People started swearing, but we're standing there looking at each other like we're two idiots. And then, what happened next? Jasmine stood up. Let's have some alcohol. Yeah, okay, Eric nodded. Jasmine went into the kitchen, sliced the lemon, and took 2 glasses. Please, go ahead, she asked, placing the drinks on the table. Then he and I spent the whole flight trying to figure out how that was possible. Fortunately, other passengers were very understanding and offered to switch places. Jasmine took a sip of the fragrant drink. And what happened next? She asked. I don't even know what to say. Imagine that you met your clone. How can you find out why she is so much like you? We started talking. We told each other about who and where we were born, about our parents, about our childhood. And Jasmine was impatient to hear the ending of the story. Hurry up, talk, skip all the details. Let's get right to the point. What did you find out? Nothing, Eric answered disappointedly. David, that's my clone's name, was born in the same city as me. His parents are alive and retired, just like my parents. You know, there's no connection in terms of surnames, neither in the first generation nor in the second. So it's a mystery, Jasmine. Eric poured himself some more alcohol. Jasmine immediately put the bottle away. You have to ask your parents. The answer is there. No, wait, we already agreed that we won't talk about it to anyone, especially not to our parents. Well, you could have told me, Jasmine said angrily. Look, I promised I wouldn't tell anyone. Wait, but why is he driving in our car? He had some important meetings, so he asked for my car. Well, why would I say no, especially since I was sick at the time? You remember. They were silent for a while. Eric, Jasmine said to her husband, what do you think about it? I don't know, honey. But we took a DNA test the other day. We're waiting for the result. We're the same age. We're probably twin brothers. I want to meet David. Or are you going to keep hiding? Jasmine asked. Sure, I'll introduce you to him. There's no need for all this secrecy now. David came to visit them on Friday, the day after Eric's confession. Jasmine opened the door. Even though she knew what she was going to see, she was dumbfounded. David was so incredibly similar to Eric that it was as if they were really the same person. Fantastic. Jasmine couldn't help herself. I've never seen anything like that. The men said hello and walked into the living room. After arguing and deliberating for a long time, they finally decided what to do next. Well, if you and I have met and there's not much chance of such a meeting, then it's time to know the truth, David concluded. That's right, but how can we ask our parents about this? It would make them feel unwell. Eric was still doubtful about the chosen tactic. You know, Eric, David put his hand on Eric's shoulder, this conversation is inevitable. We can't keep our parents from being shocked in any case, but we can try to make it all go smoothly. Let's wait for the test result. They'll email it tomorrow, Eric suggested. The results are obvious without any tests, David stated. Yes, but here's what we can do. We'll open the envelopes, and before you talk to the parents, you will show them the papers. Because if we do it right away, I don't know, I think that is fraught with bad consequences. What do you think? Jasmine looked at the men's identical faces and grinned. Even I think I'm losing my mind when I look at you guys, not to mention your parents. The results arrived early in the morning and contained no surprises. David and Eric turned out to be relatives, as they expected. The probability of relatedness was 99.99%. Have you read it? Eric asked, immediately calling David. Yeah, only it turns out that one of us is adopted. I can't accept this information yet, David shared his thoughts. On the other hand, the parents might not know. We've all heard stories about twins. They even show stuff like this on TV. Mixed up, separated. It really feels like we're in a movie, Eric chuckled nervously. You know what, brother? Let's let our parents know, and then we will act according to the situation. I'll call you later, said David, and hung up. They printed the papers and agreed to put them on the table the day when they had dinner with their parents. Eric and Jasmine had asked to visit Eric's parents, saying they missed them and wanted to spend the evening together. "Do you think they were surprised that we decided to come with no reason?" Jasmine asked as she did her makeup. "I mean, we never visited them without prior arrangement." "Don't worry, Jasmine. Mom was very happy. You know they're always happy to see us." "I know, it's just that I'm nervous, and it makes me have silly thoughts in my head," Jasmine confessed. "It's okay, don't be nervous. Just look at the situation in a rational way. I have a brother now. Suddenly our family got bigger, and life is more fun now." Next, the same things were about to happen on the different ends of the city. David put the printed certificate of having a brother on the table and waited for his parents to sit down. "David, son, please get your papers off the table," Mom asked. "I'm afraid it will get dirty. Is it something important? Put it away. Come on, hurry up." "Mother, please put everything aside for a moment. Please sit down and read it. I put the papers here for a reason." David pushed the sheet closer to his father, who raised his eyebrows in surprise and began to read, adjusting his glasses. His mother wiped her hands, put the forks aside, and sat down next to him. "Well, what is it?" As they read the papers, their faces went from red to pale. And then his mother cried out, "I don't understand. What is it? I don't understand anything." She took the document and read it line by line again, then again, and again. "Mom, please calm down." David stood up and put his arm around his mother's shoulders. "Well, here's the story. I met a guy who looks just like me. We met by chance on a plane, and we both almost went crazy. Remember when I traveled overseas? And you decided to take a test to see if you were related." Dad paused and added, "Twins." "Makes sense," he stated. "Yes, Dad." David sat back in his seat. "That meeting completely changed my life," he said tensely. "I understand, but at the same time, I don't understand anything." David's father began wiping his glasses with a kitchen towel. "Mom, Dad," David turned to his parents, "I was hoping you could help me figure it out." "Well, who else if not you?" At the same time, Eric's parents also read the test results, and then everyone was silent. No one dared to break the silence. Eric looked at Jasmine and tapped his fingers on the table. "Eric, please stop tapping," the mother asked, pressing her hand to her chest and suffocating. "Water, give me water." The mother was on the verge of fainting. "I felt it. I knew it. Where is he? Where? My son. He's alive. How could it be? It's been so many years." Eric's father put his arm around his wife. "It's okay. Calm down, or your heart will fail. Come on, take your medicine." Eric went to the locker and quickly pulled out the right vial. His father felt unwell too. Jasmine was already crying. "Eric, give everyone the medicine. Take a pill yourself, too," she asked her husband. Everyone took the medicine. Mother raised her head. Somehow she got older in an instant and looked so small and helpless. "Okay, I'll start. Please back me up," Eric's mother said to her husband, and she fell silent again for a moment. No one rushed the woman. The tears rolled ceaselessly from her eyes, and she began her story. "When I was 5 months pregnant, they told me I was having twins. At first, your father and I were shocked, but then we were so very happy. We made plans and started buying everything for 2 babies, but we didn't know yet if we were having boys or girls. But it was even more interesting that way. We chose names for the boys, Eric and David." Jasmine and Eric looked at each other, but didn't interrupt her. "The birth was premature, but as the doctor said, it's no big deal. Eric, you were born first. You screamed right away, and you had more weight. And the second boy didn't scream right away, and they had to nurse him back to health, and he weighed less," the mother continued in a muffled voice. "And after a while, they took both of you away. They moved me to another room. In the morning, they only gave me you so I could feed you. And they told me about your brother, that he was in intensive care. Things were very bad. Anyway," his mother said quietly, "Darling, you tell. I just can't." The father stood up, then sat down again in exhaustion. I will never forget that day. I came to your mother happy. My soul was full of joy. I had 2 sons. And then the doctor came out to me. It was an aged man, and he was trying not to look at me. I immediately sensed something bad. Anyway, he said, 1 baby died. Heart failure. Jasmine and Eric looked at the parents dumbfounded. How is this possible? Because David is alive and perfectly healthy. Now I understand, Eric's mother finally said. Our boy survived. And apparently he was adopted, Jasmine finished her thought. I don't understand one thing. How is that possible? How did it happen? After all these years, your brother was found, David's father said thoughtfully, and looked at his son and daughter-in-law as if he were asking them to finally tell what had happened. Interrupting one another, they told about the brothers' amazing encounter. Gee, I'll speak for myself and Mom. We'd like to meet him. What's his name? His father asked quietly. David, Eric and Jasmine answered together. David, the mother echoed, tears rolling down her face once again. Let's calm down a little and think about what we should do now, David said. His parents confessed that they had adopted him, but they had not planned to talk about it, to reveal the secret. And the fact that they had to do it under such circumstances had hurt them very much. Son, dear, please try to understand. We're not villains or criminals. We had no idea that you were one of the twins. They told us that your biological mother abandoned you. The young girl had a baby secretly from her parents. If only we had known, and the doctor seemed so nice. We thought we could trust him. We were so happy. We were so happy when we had you. His mother jumped up and down and rushed around the kitchen, clutching her hands nervously. Calm down, stop flickering in front of our eyes and sit down, Father tapped the chair, urging his wife to sit down. I can't believe it. It turns out that they lied to you? That's not what happened. They told some woman that one of the boys had died. So they stole me, and here I am, alive and well. The man paused for a moment and quietly added, Sorry. Please tell me everything about that, David asked. The parents looked at each other, and his mother whispered, I can't. Let your father tell. Me and your mom, he stopped abruptly at that word. But David put his hand on his father's arm and shook it lightly and hugged his mother. Well, the man continued, encouraged by his son, we got married early when we were still in university. We couldn't wait any longer. We were in the same class. We studied at the same school. We were young and stupid, and your mother got pregnant very early. When we lived with my parents, my mother was 37. She also gave birth to me very early. She was working, and she wasn't going to quit her job to help us with our baby. She scolded us, saying that she coped with me without grandmothers and any help, so we have to cope with the baby without help either. But then there would have been no one to take care of the baby. We were still students. We needed to finish the university. So we decided abortion. Then we became smarter. No children until graduation. And after that, your mother got pregnant again. But it was a very difficult pregnancy. Your mother was in the hospital all the time. But it didn't help. We lost the baby. Then 3 years later, we just barely got pregnant. Everything was fine. And we were happy. But in her 8th month of pregnancy, your mother twisted her ankle and fell. That boy was born prematurely. He was very weak. He only lived for a week. And then the doctor said we couldn't have any more children. We cried and applied for adoption. 3 months later, they called us and said we could speed up the process. The father lowered his eyes. For the right money, he whispered. I'm sorry, David. David's heart was racing. He was ready to cry, to scream. They had bought him. They had simply given money for him. How was that possible? They took a baby from one woman and gave him to another? For money? But David remained silent. He loved his parents. They had raised him well. He never felt like he was a stranger. His mother's love was boundless. His father gave him the kind of attention and care that he had never seen from the fathers of other children. He said nothing. He hugged his parents and cried softly. "Son, please, try to understand me," his father continued, stroking David on the shoulder. "Your mom was in such a state back then." David didn't judge them. He understood everything perfectly. But anger, resentment, and indignation swept over him. Who gave that doctor the right to dispose of people's lives? No, there was nothing to complain about, but it could have been very different. David clenched his fists. "What are we going to do, son?" his mother asked quietly. "First of all, nothing has changed between us," David reassured them. "You were and will always be my parents. Those other people, they're strangers to me, but I think we should get to know each other, to talk, to explain. They have a right to see me." "I don't know, son. I'm not sure. Your mother and I probably shouldn't meet with them," his father hesitated. "There's no reason," he added. "So many years have passed, and so many things could have happened. We shouldn't bring up the past." "It's complicated," the mother added, "but I feel we should tell those people the whole truth. No matter how frightening it is, it's important for me to tell them that we didn't mean to. We didn't think. We just didn't know." The woman cried again. "We're so guilty. Poor, poor woman." A couple of days later, the brothers met again and told each other about everything. "My parents would like to meet you," Eric added after a moment of silence. "I understand, but I'm not ready yet. I have no idea what it's going to be like," David replied. "Okay, let me just tell them the story about your adoption for now. I guess we don't need to talk about the money." "Eric," Jasmine interjected, "don't try to make fools of your parents. They won't believe that such an experienced doctor would give David away to other people for no reason, declaring him dead. It's obvious. It's either revenge or money." "Yeah, you're right. What are we going to do?" Eric asked. "Look, brother," David interjected into the conversation, "please ask your parents not to ask how this happened. Isn't it enough for them to know I'm alive? I'm not making excuses for my parents," he added. "But you have to understand me. I love them. They're my mom and dad. Do you understand? Or no?" "Come on, David, it's okay. We didn't even think of that," Eric reassured his brother. "If we start looking for someone to blame, the only person to blame is the one who did it all," Jasmine said. "Anyway, I'm really glad we have each other now," David said sentimentally. "Okay, please, no sentimentality," Eric hugged his brother and patted him on the shoulder. "Let me know when you're ready to see your parents. They're waiting." David nodded. "Do you think he is very worried about it?" asked Jasmine on the way home. "Jasmine, of course he's worried. But we're not children, we're adult men. So the word very probably doesn't fit. We grew up in wonderful families, as only children. We have nothing to complain about." "Yes, really. You're both very lucky. And the fact that both you and his parents wanted to call him David, well, it's not just coincidence. It's a miracle." One evening, a few days after the major change in their lives, Eric's mother turned apprehensively to her husband. "You know, I've been thinking, listening to myself, do we really need to meet our son? Maybe we should just leave it as it is? Let the guys communicate with each other. They like it, I guess. But what about us? I'm afraid. I'm afraid for me, and I'm afraid for you. I'm not sure we can overcome this ordeal. No, darling, we have no strength." The man put his arms around his wife. "So, are you just going to avoid him?" he asked. "Well, how do you imagine it? In that case, they would have to hide from us. What about holidays? For example, Eric's birthday? Are you going to force him to choose between us and his brother? Between family and friends? No, you can't do that. Let's just calm down. Let's wait as long as you and he need. And then we'll meet. What do you think? Do you agree?" The woman nodded, put her arm around her husband, and whispered, "All right, but don't rush me." But the meeting of parents and son happened by chance, and quite unexpectedly. At high speed, rushing to the meeting with his partners, Eric got into an accident, failing to control his car. Jasmine called his parents, and they rushed to the hospital. "We need blood, lots of blood," she shouted as soon as the parents entered the emergency room. Eric's mother almost fainted. "Eric and I have the same blood type. I'll give it all," the mother cried. But after the first minute of the blood collection procedure, she fainted. "I'm calling David." Jasmine felt really bad. David arrived right away. His t-shirt was inside out, and he wore funny indoor slippers on his feet. He quickly looked at the parents, saying hello shyly. "He looks just like Eric," his mother whispered in a weak voice. He immediately went for a blood test. "Unfortunately, we can't give your blood to your brother either. You had viral hepatitis. It's unacceptable." "I didn't know that," David exclaimed in shock. "We don't have the right blood type right now," the doctor reported. "It's a rare blood type, and by the time they bring it from another hospital, time will be wasted." "My father has the same blood type," David muttered. The doctor looked at Eric's father in surprise. "But why didn't you say a word about it? Your son is dying and you—" No, David quickly muttered, "not him." The doctor shook his head. "Quickly, go ahead." David dialed his father's number. The time dragged on endlessly. When David's parents entered the emergency room, everyone finally calmed down. The blood from David's father matched perfectly. Eric quickly began to heal. No one wanted to think about how it might have ended if not for David's father. Visiting the patient, the families unwittingly crossed paths and began to communicate little by little. Gradually, David was learning more and more about his biological parents. He realized it would have taken him a long time under different circumstances to discover what was revealed in such an extreme situation. He saw that his parents were sensitive, empathetic people who did not bother him with questions or hugs. No one insisted on anything. Everything gradually worked out on its own. One day, David was in a hurry. He only had a few minutes, but he decided to visit his brother quickly. He entered the room, but no one was there. They had taken Eric away for treatment. Only his mother was standing at the window. When she heard the door swing open, she turned around. David was standing on the doorstep. He stopped. Mother and son looked at each other for a long time. It was as if there was some thick, invisible wall between them. The woman could feel it physically. A few long seconds passed like that. Suddenly, David felt some powerful energy inside him, and that energy running through his whole body pushed David through that dense wall toward his mother. She extended her arms toward him at that moment, and a moment later, mother and son found themselves in each other's arms. "My son," the woman whispered. "David, hello." At that moment, David felt that all the moral wounds were healed in a second. He felt tremendous inner strength, the kind of strength someone could only get from a mother. The two families had finally bonded and become one big, happy family. Jasmine and Eric had twin boys that same year. David finally got married, and his family had twin boys as well.